You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Welcome back to Arsenal Pass. This is episode 9. I'm Brendan Patrick, joined always by calling champion Hayden Dale. Today we'll be breaking down the Auckland Calling that recently happened. It was a Monarch Limited calling, started with Sealed and ended with Draft. Lucky enough, we do have a participant on the cast today. It's going to be Hayden. Hayden, how are you doing?
I'm good, Brendan. I think you're going to definitely have to start calling me former calling champion Hayden Dale, especially after the performance in the weekend, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the performance on the weekend, the pod today is going to be all about breaking down what that weekend was like. So it's mostly going to be me interviewing Hayden, but we're going to delve into his testing process, what it was like, to be at the calling, the battle harden that happened before, on the day before, which I actually think they did pretty well in, as well as what it was like to play the sealed portion, and then ultimately the constructed PTI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Hayden.
I was going to say, just break down the weekend. Of course, it's for those of you who haven't been to a calling weekend, there's a lot happening during the 3 days. So, if you went there, I'll try and give a bit of insight to what it was like to be there.
Mm-hmm. And as always, starting with the first section, this week in Fab, Hayden, what have you been playing other than the calling? You had any other experiences?
Yeah, I did. I actually played my first skirmish of the skirmish season on, weirdly, a Tuesday evening skirmish. So there's a capital city of Australia is Canberra, for those of you that might not know overseas. It's about 3 hours drive, 2 hours 50 from where I live here in Sydney. Decided on Tuesday after work to drive down and go and play in one of the skirmishes down there, which was, a real great experience. So pretty new community down there. They haven't been playing Flesh and Blood that long, but some really great stores down there. Went along to one. Played a skirmish with some locals there. Blitz. About 3 or 4 of us that went down from Sydney, from our local scene. So really great event. And the eventual winner was actually a really nice young girl named Madison, who I think she's only 13 or 14. Just crushed it with Dorinthia. So she took out a lot of the Sydney guys in the top 4. So congratulations to her. She played really well.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, it's definitely not your traditional player profile, but that's awesome that she won it and she was able to take down, some pretty serious competition on the other end of the table. So congratulations to her.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, good to see, younger players in the game doing well, and bodes well for the future, right? So, other than that, this week, not too much. Took a day off after the getting back from the calling, and just a little bit of rest and relaxation. But we'll get back into some more games this week.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so like we mentioned last week, our skirmish season kind of officially started, I guess, for my local scene. I played in the Lucky Game skirmish for about 2 rounds on Saturday, and then I headed over to Reaper Game Store and played an in-person skirmish, which was sealed, and then top 8 draft. So in that one, I was in sealed. I played Prism, had a very, very weak pool. It was pretty interesting. The pool had no six attacks, and it also had no Dreamweaver. So I was very, very unfavored in the mirror. And actually had to play like 3 Levias and 3 Prisms, I think it was. So
wow.
I had to work. I had to work for it to get to that top 8. But in top 8, I drafted Levia. I had 2 Levia drafters to my left. Somehow, 2 very committed men ended up staying in Levia, even though I cut them off pretty hard in pack 1. So my pack 1 was fantastic. My pack 2 was absolutely abysmal. I almost got no playables from it. And then pack 3, I just soaked up all the good stuff, and they ended up with, decks that probably should have been running some cracked bubbles, but weren't. It was really interesting. I ended up going 8-0 that day. I was able to take home the, that Command and Conquer playmat, as well as a Cold Foil Shane. So pretty excited about it. Those games are also recorded on DM Armada's YouTube, I believe. We live streamed the top 8. So yeah, it was a good experience. I was happy I was able to take it home. We had about 40 competitors. So
awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, nice. We run there to 8-0. That's interesting about the draft. You said with yourself into Levia and then 2 Levia drafters to your left. Something that I've noticed a lot in this format is actually how the draft goes and how players are maybe struggling to read signals, or they're not there like they have been in, say, a Welcome to Wraith format where you don't have the talent system and you don't have the packs are a lot more structured. I think it's something that Brendan, I saw in our comments last week asking about draft. I think we're gonna have to cover the draft format pretty soon. I think it's a really interesting, especially with Monarch, but in general the draft format is really interesting.
Yeah, so those two players to my left, they're actually they're regulars at my locals. I know them pretty well, so I think I can comfortably say that it wasn't an intelligent decision. They both just kind of picked Levia from their first card, and I think they just stuck to it. Maybe it wasn't their first, but it was like their second or third. So I think it was. I don't think it was very tactical. They kind of just stuck to their guns and picked Levia and decided to draft that. And yeah, I was so confused when I saw Pack 2. I was like, there's literally like I knew that the cards I were getting were so few that it couldn't just be one, right?
Yeah,
like it couldn't just be one time. Like it literally had to be two or three, and I was just like blown away. But yeah, they definitely, of course, I think in retrospect they would have not gone Levia. But yeah, that table was pretty interesting because obviously I had to play Levia after getting cut very, very hard Pack 2, and then at our table we had like 2 Shane drafters and 1 Bolton drafter. I mean, the Bolton I played in the finals like literally had a constructed deck. They had like Lumina, Celestial Cataclysm, like a V. It was pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah. those are the wins that you have to fight hard for. That's for sure.
Yeah, he had 40 cards in his deck too. He had 40 playable cards, which is really interesting. It's like something I talked about it. I talked to him on Sunday about it. But I thought when he was including 40 playable cards that his idea was to fatigue me because I had like 30, 31 actually when I sided in. And for some reason, he ended up taking damage, like just taking a lot of damage to give some back. And actually, I arsenaled the Consuming Aftermath like on turn 2, literally just to set up this kind of big win condition with my Unworldly Bellow that I was waiting on. But I ended up getting him down to 1, and then I dominated him for, I think it was like 9 or 11 or something. So yeah, it was interesting because I thought that the idea was going to be to fatigue me because I was like, I didn't want, when I'm playing in a more casual setting like skirmish, instead of counting my opponent's deck, sometimes I'll just ask them and usually they'll tell me.
Yeah.
So when he told me 40, I was like, oh God, like here we go. I'm going to get fatigued. Like this is going to be miserable. But yeah, it ended up being a pretty standard game. And then I had the Consuming Aftermath with like a very large dominate at the end to win.
Yeah, really interesting. Definitely saw some strategies around deck size and what people were doing at the calling. So might talk about that once we get into the main topic of the pod as well.
Yeah. Just quickly want to mention too, I also had another skirmish on Sunday, but it was like a Blitz pre-con skirmish. I think that the store was given the option to do sealed or Blitz, so they combined it and did sealed Blitz. Maybe misunderstood it a bit. But that one was really interesting because I played Levia and I lost in the quarterfinals to somebody on Prism, which is, if you've played the pre-cons, generally Levia is quite strong versus Prism. But I think that this player, I actually hadn't met him before. He plays at that game store, I think, almost exclusively. I think he was pretty well versed in the matchup because, yeah, like I was pretty fairly beat in that game. Like he was definitely playing around his Phantasmify and his Big Dominate, also playing around his Prismatic Shield and Merciful Retribution, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I eventually died to like 15 blood debt, but like his overall macro strategy was like was very well planned out. And it was like one of those games it was definitely something I think about because I was, very handily beat in the end, I think, from like an overall strategy perspective, which I was impressed by.
Interesting. Okay. Livia's weekend in some respects, but maybe not others.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and head into the news for this week. Hayden, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, definitely. So, as we already talked about, Skirmish Season 2 well and truly underway. We've both now played in one each, and there looks like there's been quite a few happening, both across Europe, North America, Asia Pacific as well. I know there's, personally for me, there's none in Australia this weekend because the Melbourne Calling was meant to be happening this week. For those that you haven't seen, that's been postponed due to conditions down in Melbourne. So Melbourne actually unfortunately went into another lockdown. So they're pushing that out probably by a month. It's looking like about 10th of July based on what LSS have said is when the Melbourne Calling will go ahead now. So Yeah, a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. So probably weekend off for me this week. No skirmishes. But I know, Brendan, you've probably got a few more. I've seen there's already a few online ones this week. There's some in-person ones across Europe and North America as well.
Oh yeah, we're in full swing in terms of skirmishes and events. The online ones, most of them are sold out, to my knowledge. But still, if you're able to get in them, you probably have some packed weekends coming up. With that said, speaking of callings, if you did watch the stream this past weekend, they did announce that a U.S. calling will be happening in September. There is no location confirmed or venue or format for that matter, but we can all mark down our calendars, and looks like September is gonna be the first calling post COVID, the first like real calling, right? Because those 20, I think they were in 2019. Yeah, like the end of 2019. Those callings were, I think that, the upcoming one will be closer to that 100, 200 player, where those ones were, I think, like 30 or 40. So super excited.
This is gonna be fantastic. I think whatever, if there's a similar player cap to what they've had in Melbourne and Auckland, I have full confidence that'll sell out. I think there's a lot of players who have jumped on the game within the US who would welcome a small trip to an event like the Calling, and the weekends are just so packed, right? Like you have these battle hardened events, you have the main event, you'll have a PTI event, side event on the Sunday, so there's something for everyone to go and play. So I would fully expect that event is going to be huge and a massive opportunity to see what the North American crowd have in terms of who might rise to the top in the first ever, or the first calling post a World of Unlimited product.
Yeah, and to speak to that number cap, if they do put it at like 250, like what they had in New Zealand, I would genuinely be stressed about getting in, because the US is, I know that people are kind of chomping at the bits to get into the competitive events, and I think a 250 would sell out like with. I mean, I would say conservatively within the day, but it could be like within a couple hours.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at these skirmishes, online skirmishes, and how popular they are, and that is predominantly people from. I know there's some players from Singapore and a bit from Europe that joined, but there is a lot of players based in the US and Canada that are jumping into these events. So, and that's just domestically. So, yeah.
Yep.
Other than that, so as I said, unfortunately, Melbourne calling postponed for now. But if you do want to go back and check out some of what happened at Auckland, there is coverage up on the Fab TCG YouTube. They streamed the whole event. They had really fantastic commentary from the local team there, from the staff, the LSS staff who ran that event the whole weekend. Great feature table with a full production team actually. So they really went all out on it, which was fantastic. Moving that one step closer to just really sort of the coverage levels you'd expect to see with how a game like Fab is growing.
Yeah, I was very impressed. It was definitely a step up from the previous production, and I really liked the casting booth, and also some of the ways in which the casters were interacting with each other. You kind of had. I really liked Callum's approach to. I don't know. He kind of has this. It's like more low to the ground kind of basic information that's happening, but the way that he was explaining it was like getting me excited. It's like, oh, this ripped reality's coming in. If there's an arcane, and I was like, oh, this is really well done. Like, I really like this. And then it was awesome hearing Karen, and then sorry, I'm forgetting his name.
Ian, what else was on?
Yeah, of course, Ian. Yeah. And obviously James too as well popped in, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've already watched back a little bit just to see the commentary, and they did a fantastic job. So excited to see more coverage of large scale Flesh and Blood events in the future. I think it's such a great way for me. I don't know, for something about it, I find the game a bit easier to digest and watch than I have for other games. I did struggle with other card games to watch streamed content, but this one I find a little bit easier. So not sure why, but yeah, I enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I just want to quickly mention that we do have videos going up on Channel Fireball this week, next week, pretty much every single week. We do a new video for them. So if you want to check it out, we play both Blitz, and I think tomorrow we're going to be recording a Classic Constructed, maybe Shane versus Katsu. So that should be exciting. Quick spoiler alert, that was the finals of the Pro Tour Invitation on the Sunday of the Calling, was a Control Ninja versus Shane list. So we're going to be playing that back and uploading it to Channel Fireball. But if you are shopping on Channel Fireball, go ahead and plug our code in the in the checkout. That's Arsenal Pass. The show name, no space, Arsenal Pass. And quickly before I head to the last section, I just want to mention Gauntlet. Gauntlet has been totally popping off. We had another 50 competitors this week. It was a really awesome event. 6 rounds of Swiss, cut to top 8. We had a wizard win this time. His name is Dominic. He's from Canada. Was really impressed with it. The finals was crazy, actually. It was some of the craziest wizard off the tops I've ever seen. Not in the way he ended up winning, but he did like kind of random Kano a Stir the Eighth Wind off the top and had the blazing in hand, and it was like, I remember me and Dante were just laughing so hard on stream. But it was a great game, and there were some really cool matches to watch during that event. So I was really impressed with it. And then obviously, next week we'll be doing it again every Monday, 8 p.m. EST. We're running those gauntlets. So if you're looking to compete or just play casually, it's a great place to start. So I hope to see you there.
Awesome. I didn't see last week, so I'm going to have to go back and watch that back and see Dominic crush it on Kano.
All right, and I can hear those patties sizzle. We're throwing the shrimpies on the Barbie and heading to the Command and Cookout section. The new name for the correspondence section is where we're going to be answering your questions. As always, if you do have a question for the podcast, you can either throw it on the YouTube channel, post it as a comment, or if you want to email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. We love to get those questions and get into some interesting topics in this section. So Hayden, why don't you lead us off with our question for the week?
Yeah, well, so first of all, great intro. Second of all, for those that you, of course, know, we had a giveaway last week for a Cold Foil Dawnblade. We asked you your questions and feedback in the comment section on YouTube, which, we got a bunch. So thank you for leaving us some ideas, and there's some things we definitely want to cover in the future that listeners have asked us about. So they're going to go on the schedule for sure. But we do have a winner for the draw. So that is Jason Lai. I know there's 2 Jasons on there, so that's Jason Lai, L-Y. And Jason asked us, who can I pay to get an Arsenal pass map, Brendan?
Yeah, so both Hayden and I at this point have printed the Arsenal pass mats for ourselves. I think that the quality came out a bit different than we were expecting. They're a little bit dark. They're also very expensive. So at this point, we were just kind of looking to see how it turned out with the art that we had commissioned. And I'm pretty happy with the design overall. Just need to change up the colors a little bit and then see if we can get them printed locally for really cheap. I think if we do end up selling them, I hesitate to see selling too because we might just give them away. We'll probably sell them at as close to break even as possible and make them as cheap as possible. But yeah, still on the radar, still trying to figure out how we're going to go about doing it, but hopefully soon.
Yep, definitely. And thank you for your question, Jason. If you could fire off an email to us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com with your shipping details, we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. But congratulations. And, I thought, great question from Jason, but there was also some amazing questions in the chat and the questions in the comment section from last week, Brennan. So I wanted to ask another question. I actually did respond to this question when it was asked on the YouTube comment section, but I actually think it's just a really great question that I'd love others to hear and also to get your opinion on it, Brennan. So this question comes from Amy Richards. So thank you for the question, Amy. Amy says, love the podcast, very thoughtful and great insight. My question, in your opinion, how long does it take for a new player to not be new? When did Flesh and Blood click for you?
I'm going to let you go first, Hayden.
Yeah, so I replied to Amy and said that I think it really varies for each individual. Flesh and Blood's quite a complex game, and I think there's a lot of different levels to the game. You can be proficient at the basics and the fundamentals, which we talk about a lot, and have a really good time and play really well. I've also seen, some really experienced card game players come in, with a real sort of mindset to pick up the game, be a sponge and learn as much as possible and get better at the game quickly. And they've done it, within a few weeks or months. And then, there's other players who have done it at their own pace, play in their local armories every week, get in a few games here and there. And it might take, more like a few months for the game to start clicking for them. And that's, perfectly fine. I think for me personally, probably after... to be honest, it's still clicking with me. I think there's things all the time that I go, how am I only just learning this now? But I think probably the fundamentals and the basics, probably after the first calling and as I started to play the game a lot more, probably about 3 months in, started to click with me. What about you, Brennan?
Yeah, so you kind of stole my answer there at the end. I would say, it is that I look at myself as still a new player, like still
Mhm.
totally a novice, still just absolutely like a student of the game at this point. Like I look to learn from everybody, people that I, respect in the community for everything they do, and maybe some people that I don't really like. I mean, I'm always looking to, and there's not many of them, by the way, but I'm always looking to learn from everyone, whether I disagree with their opinions, agree with their opinions. I mean, I'm always looking for new angles on how people perceive the game, and I think that every opinion has some sort of validity to it and should be considered. Um, so I really don't consider myself, as Fab has kind of clicked for me yet. I would say that if we wanted to look at just results, so when I started to kind of get results, I did go to a calling and I got second, but that's a long time ago. Since then I've pretty much just stayed very disciplined. I probably play Flesh and Blood for almost 20 hours a week. And I have like strict testing regimens, with certain groups, and I stick to that. And I really don't deviate from that. And my kind of philosophy there is that, um, is like divorce yourself from the outcome and trust the process. So over anything, whether I'm putting up results or I'm not, I just stick to my testing, stick to my regimen, and just always try to improve.
Yep. I like that. I like that. As you say, focus on the process, not the outcome as much, which I think is really important for getting better rather than just focusing on winning, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for the question, Amy. If anyone has any questions, you again can fire those off to arsenalpassfab@gmail.com or leave them in the comment section, and we'll definitely get to more of those questions that we had last week as well. And, Brendan, on that, you said you came second in the calling. I came first in the calling, but, things have moved on. The players are a lot better in this game now. And with that, let's segue into the main topic of the pod, yeah?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and burn me. But yeah,
And
I mean,
me.
obviously, obviously, this pod is going to be largely about Hayden. He went to the event, and like, there's a lot that's going on there. So we know that Hayden obviously didn't win the calling, and let's just go spoiler alert: he went 2-2 and he dropped in the actual sealed event. So
Mhm.
there's a lot to unpack there. But first, let's go ahead and start with the Battle Hardened event before the calling. So talk to me about that event. Tell me about Team Sealed, and I know that you and Dan, and I forget can you remind me your third
Yeah,
team
so
member's name?
our Battle Hardened team was myself, Dan Mackay, who we had on the pod a couple of weeks ago, and David Marshall, who's quite a well-known Magic player within New Zealand, who made the jump to Fab recently.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, tell me about that day. Tell me like about what you guys opened. Team, just break down Team Sealed as well too, because I think
Yep.
a lot of our listeners has probably never played that format. I know I never have, but just kind of just start breaking it down for me, and I'll ask questions as we go.
Yeah, so I didn't know what to expect with this format. This was my first time playing Team Sealed. It is genuinely a fantastic format. So we were given 9 packs of Monarch to build 3 sealed decks, or three minimum 30 card decks, which is actually quite challenging when you think about it. You get 6 packs for one at a sealed event or a pre-release or whatever it might be, and we got 9 total to build 3 decks. So the power level of I would say the decks overall was reasonably low. Of course, across those 9 packs, you're going to have, as you would see with your 6 packs, you get, I've got 12 cards for this hero, 13 for this hero, but my generics only sort of help with maybe one of those, whatever it might be. So it's really challenging to work out where you're going to put your generics and because you don't want to steal good generics from one deck that you could build. Say you could build a really good Livia deck, but you might need some of those 6 attacks in there to make your attacks better, like your Dread Screamers, etc. But if you take some of those, you take all the 6 attacks into there, then how do your Bolton or Prism players now with 0 6 attacks fare against Prism, for instance? So there's a lot of really cool decisions like that. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. I think when we opened our packs, we felt like our decks were pretty underpowered. We didn't open any. I think the only kind of bombish card we had is we had 1 via the Vanguard. The rest of our packs the rest of our cards were pretty poor in terms of like true raw power level. So we built a Bolton deck that we felt was probably the best deck we had out of the pool. We gave that to Dave to play. I sat in the middle and I played a chain deck, which I think was actually our weakest deck. I didn't necessarily think it was at first, but it just didn't really basically have any ways to win the game. It was full of, like average blood deck cards and no real end game other than hoping that the opponent would take some damage and we could push a big turn to finish. And then we also had a Prism deck, which was pretty bog standard, which Dan played.
Yeah. So how did you, I know that the end result was that you guys won the event, but just I know some of us don't know. I don't even think I know. How does the format actually play out in terms of, playing your games and your matches, and how do they determine a winner?
Yeah. So it's still, you assign the 3 players, seat 1, 2, 3, or ABC, and you're going to sit in a row. So B in the middle, of course, A and C on the sides, and then they play against the opposite players on the other side with those letters. And then you play best of 1 as you would usually. You can talk with your teammates. So, I sat in the middle and was having conversations with Dan to my left and Dave to my right, often asking them questions about my plays as well, and opponents doing the same. And then it's the best 2 out of 3 of those. So, if we won our first 2 matches and one match was still going, we've won the round, basically. You can play out the game if you want to. We played out most of our games just for fun, for practice. But that is how they work. So it's a really fun format where you get to, play with friends or teammates or whoever it might be, or even, players you haven't played with before. And you get to communicate, talk about the games, give each other advice and talk through strategy and things like that, which is really fun, actually. So for those of you that haven't played team events before, it's quite a fun experience.
So did you just play like X rounds of Swiss, no cuts to top 8, and you were the undefeated team at the end, or how did that work?
Yeah, so there was actually 2 Battle Hardens, just because of space capacity and the amount of players that wanted to play. So I think the one we went to was, I want to say maybe nearly 20 teams. And we went 4-0. It was just a straight Swiss. I think there was actually another team that went 4-0, but they got the pair down in the last round. Whereas we played a team that had just beaten one of the dev teams. We never got to play an LSS team, unfortunately. There was a couple there.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, we didn't get to snag any, beat them up and snag any nice foils. I think the teams there went 3-1 and 2-2. It's a really difficult format, so I think it just goes to show as well.
And that was at Card Merchant, right?
Yeah, we went to the Card Merchant one for sure. Yeah,
the one that's in that like mall.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what the last calling was. Yeah.
Yeah, I played on there as well. That's super cool. And then so what did you guys get for winning it all? What was the reward?
So we got I think we got a box and a half of. We just got product basically. It was a pretty casual event. Entry fee was pretty low. It was just a good opportunity to play against players from all around New Zealand, players I hadn't seen before, and speak to some players. So yeah, it was a bit more casual, but it was a great event.
Awesome. So now I want to head into the calling, right? The main day of the event. But before we get there, we need to talk about your testing. How did you prepare? What was your strategy? Did you meet your testing criteria that you planned out for yourself before you went to the event? Where did you fall short? Just bring us into your process.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you earlier on when we were answering Amy's question, you said you focus on the process more than being outcome orientated, and I think the process was, my focus was, okay, I had a set. I wanted to get in minimum 10 drafts, and I wanted to play sealed 3 times a week with different players if I could. So I felt that I had an idea of how I wanted to play the sealed format, but I thought that people would probably have different ideas, and I might be able to learn something from that. As it turned out, in the first week I was able to play a reasonable amount of sealed. I kind of hit my goal. So I started testing about a month before. In the first week, I was able to play the sealed games I wanted. And then basically the wheels kind of fell off from there. I wasn't able to test as much as I would have liked. I didn't get to play as many sealed games as I would have liked, but I did get to do a few drafts. I think in total I did 6 drafts. So I got just over halfway to my target of 10 minimum. And felt like those were really important. And going to the event, I felt if I could get to day 2, I felt pretty confident about the draft format. But I was worried about the seal format. I felt like I had an idea. The seal format is a lot more complex than it looks, I think, on the surface of it. The heroes play out in certain ways, naturally, but then when you pair into different heroes, like a chain playing versus Prism is a great example. I might use my round 1 as an example in a minute, but you have to change the way you play in that matchup. So, and if you haven't really played against those heroes and done a bit of testing, it's really difficult to know sort of the key turns and the key cards you're looking for and how you can actually win those games. So I do wish I got in more sealed, but also at the end of the day, I think I got in a reasonable number of games and was happy enough with what I got to do for testing. Just in terms of how I actually did my testing, like who I tested with, things like that. So we were able to every now and again get a group together here locally to do the drafts. That was actually really difficult. People are really busy, as as people are with work and life and family and things like that. So not able to. I think only in the end able to get together a couple of times. And sealed, we were able to get together generally once a week, but then the rest was doing like webcam games with Brennan, with some of the guys back home in New Zealand too have jumped into the game as well. We're able to get in a few games, but that was kind of the extent of it.
Okay, so there's an important phrase I want to bring out there. You said that kind of the wheels fell off. So there's anything that you learned about your testing process that that you're going to improve upon and change for next time? Because like we talked about, the Melbourne calling may be coming up in a month here. Obviously, COVID willing. But what did you learn from that process, and maybe falling short, during that time, that you're going to improve upon for this upcoming calling?
I think in the sealed part of it, so something that I did more towards the end was try and test specific matchups of heroes. So I had a bunch of pools that I'd opened up from my cases and saved those pools, and then at the start I was just building pools and people were building pools and we were just playing them into each other. And sometimes I'd find that I might play two players in a row who had very similar pools and I didn't feel like I learned much out of it, or I played two pools in a row that were really similar. Maybe some of the cards were different, obviously, but what the deck was trying to do, how it was trying to play out, was basically the same with a few different cards. So I felt like after a while, I shouldn't be focusing on testing those. What I would do next time is I would go back and probably write down, the list of archetypes within these heroes or matchup scenarios that I'm worried about or haven't had experience of, and test those specifically. So if I have, a prison pool, for instance, that has no 6 attacks in it, how do I win the mirror? Then let's go play some games of the mirror against a prison build that has 2, 3, 6 attacks in it, and learn how to play that. So those are the kind of things I feel like I need to do next time to make sure my testing is more effective, so that in gameplay scenarios and in real situations during the event, I have a bit of a better handle of how I need to play those games instead of doing it on the fly, as it were.
Yeah. So to paraphrase that, I would say playing, opening 6-packs to sealed and just playing versus another random 6-packs is not as beneficial as, maybe having a large number of sealed pools. Let's say, you have 15 or something like that, and you're able to kind of identify what archetype this pool is, save it, and then play it against another specific pool. Say, okay, this looks very weak versus Shane. This looks very weak versus the Prism Mirror. How do I do that? And you target that specific weakness, and then you learn from that.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think the actual ways to win for a lot of these decks are quite clear. Something like a Prism, there's the old make a spectral shield, protect it. But then you need to learn, okay, and what matchups can I actually do that, and how does that actually play out? Is that viable against every deck, or is there some cards where if my opponent has, say, Via the Vanguard, can I just never do that, for instance? So a lot to learn from playing into specific pools, I think.
All right, very interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and move into the main day. Before I get there, because I know I'm gonna forget, because I'm gonna get too caught up in the process and all of that, because obviously, as you can tell, it's fascinating to me. I just want to do a huge shout out and congratulations to Matt Rogers, who actually won the event. Quite a few of his games are on camera. I thought he played incredibly. I mean, the man is an absolute Goliath of a player. He's been there since 2019. I've had the pleasure of playing against him myself. And I'm just, it's really impressive, and I'm really happy for him with the win. And I remember hearing his post game interview, and I think it's like the absolute correct mindset to have. They were talking about this, like, oh, it's so, you're so happy, this feels so good. And he's like, I'm going to be a world champion. Like, that's like, and I think that's kind of been his mindset from the beginning, is that he's focused on, being the absolute best. And we see that through his play. I'm sure his testing regimen is very solid, and it's awesome to see that pay off. But I think that, and I know a lot of people would agree with me, is that this is not the last we've seen of Matt Rogers, and he's only going to grow into the scene. But obviously, just want to give out a huge congratulations for winning this event.
Yep, definitely big congratulations, and to the top 8 as well. those players, Matt included, and the other 7 players on the top 8 had to fight through 240 other players to get there, and a really tough cut to day 2 to the top 32 from that 240. So congratulations to all those players for their achievements.
Yeah. So it's the day of the calling. We're Hayden Dale right now. We sit down, we open up our packs. What's the first thing you're thinking? You've got them all open. Were you being pulled? What heroes? I mean, was there maybe 2 you were considering? Were you worried about, on the deck you ended up with, were you worried about some weaknesses? Maybe you were bad in the mirror, just go ahead. Bring me into it.
So the first thing I noticed when I opened up the pool was I actually have 15 prism cards. So the most by a mile. There's a couple of standouts in there. There's a red prismatic shield and a yellow prismatic shield. Red prismatic shield I think is a card that is very, very strong. If you get to go second and play it on turn 1, you're really well ahead in that match, especially if you can play a good number of blues. I have a red surging militia. I have a way to pair that with a Phantasmify and a Seek Enlightenment, both yellow, so to pair with my surging militia as a maybe suited win condition. Other than that, though, I don't have a lot. My Bolton pool has some good ways to charge, but no payoffs. So I have a take flight and some bolts of courage, things like that, but no V, no Valiant Thrust, no real ways to pay off. And then my shadow is just really poor. So I have no good shadow talents. I think I opened 3 or 4 Blood Tribute, 2 of which being blue, which is not really where you want to be. And just overall no really strength in my shadow. So basically immediately looking at Prism and Bolton, I lay out Bolton. I don't think there's a way that I can play 30 cards, be happy with it, and win games consistently. I just feel like I'm just going to lose to better decks, and I actually don't have. I have 1 red 6 attack generic, so playing to Prism with that pool, which I felt there was going to be a lot of Prism, was going to be a nightmare. So kind of discarded that, went to the Prism. It was definitely the strongest in the pool. Didn't have a Halo, which is a card I think is really important, especially for the Prism Mirror. But I did have the red Prismatic Shield, which I felt was a card that would help me in the Prism Mirror, and knew there would be a reasonable amount of it. And I was a bit worried about the 1 6 attack generic, but it is what it is. So put that together. I also had a red Glisten, which I felt was a good way to win games. I probably wasn't going to play it in every matchup, but I felt it was a good way to win the game, especially in the mirror. So that was kind of, I laid out my deck. I felt it was reasonable, but I definitely wasn't super excited. My equipment was fairly limited.
Dreamweavers?
I did have a Dreamweavers, for sure. So that was helpful. But I think I would have rather preferred the Halo. I think that card is. I have to go back and revise my original grading of that card. I think that card is just super important for Prism. So, that's what my deck ended up being, a Prism deck.
Were you happy? I know you said that you maybe weren't happy with the power level upon opening your deck, but were you happy landing on Prism, or you think you would have preferred to pilot a different hero through the Swiss?
So I was hoping to open not Prism. I was hoping to open quite a good Shadow pool. With some reasonable 6 attack generics or Shadow cards. Basically because I felt there was going to be a lot of Prism there, and I wanted a deck that I felt I had a good strategy to play into Prism decks with. And I felt that if basically I had a weaker Prism deck than a lot of other people would, it was going to be very difficult. So I was hoping to open, ideally a really strong Levia pool with a couple of good win conditions. It doesn't even need to be that crazy, right? Like just a couple of good win conditions, whether it be Convulsions or Writhing Beast Hulk or plus some good generics and some good 6 attacks, then I would have been happy playing that. Hooves, I think is really important there as well. Or even I would have been happy to play Chain. I think I had a strategy for playing Chain into Prism that I was really happy with. How to play that match to avoid fatigue and to put pressure on them, which funnily enough ended up happening to me in round 1, which we can talk about. But so I was hoping to have Shadow, but in the end, the Prism was in the pool.
All right, so you spoiled a little bit, but round 1 is called. We sit down, we look across the table. Who do we see?
One of my best mates, unfortunately. So Dave, who was my teammate in the Battle Hardened, who is a long-time friend. We used to play Magic together and finally got on to Flesh and Blood last year. Unfortunately, we paired in round 1, and funnily enough, before round 1 is paired, me and Dave are talking outside. He comes over to our group and he goes, "All right, this is my seal pool. Like, what do you think? I'm in chain. I think it's correct, but I'm not sure about some of these last cards." And we talk about it. We talk about the pool, and then we talk about the prison matchup specifically. And we talk about the way to play that prison matchup, which we were actually doing the night before as well, but just reiterating with his deck a few cards that maybe he should and shouldn't play in their matchup, and how we can get there in their matchup. And then we pair in round 1. Dave plays basically perfectly. I think he played really, really well. Executed the strategy, which was the strategy that we felt was important to play into prison, is basically to identify if they're going to try and fatigue you by blocking out as much as possible and maybe sitting on a prismatic shield or something. And instead of allowing them to do that, not soul shackling early, using good generics in your pool or good red cards to present some damage, and then just stacking the bottom of your deck, getting those really powerful blood deck cards into the bottom of your deck, so that when you do start shackling, maybe it could even be as early as turn 3, as late as turn 5 in some matchups, depending on what your opponent, how much pressure they're able to put out, and how much pressure you need to put back. Then once you start to soul shackle and banish those cards late game, you're just hitting gas. You're not banishing your really strong generics and actually just losing damage out of your deck. You're keeping the damage in your deck. So Dave did that really well against me on Prism, and yeah, to be honest, crushed me. Like, it wasn't even that close.
And let's unpack that. The psychological impact of that. So it's round 1. I mean, I don't know if you're the same as me, but I prefer to lose to my friends, so that is some sort of a mitigator. But losing round 1 at an event like this, devastating. And with the changes to the format, you had to go 5-0 after that, at least, to make the top 32, especially after losing round 1. I mean, it's the worst round you can lose in Flesh and Blood. How are you feeling after this, and what's going through your head?
To be honest, I wasn't too bad. Like, I was gutted to lose to play against Dave, but the same, when someone plays really well against me, I don't get annoyed, I guess, about losing to variance or to when I feel like I couldn't have done something. And I feel like maybe I could have played better for sure, but I also think that Dave just played super well, so I wasn't that upset about it. I was happy for him getting the win and playing really well, and I just felt kind of, well, I'll just 5-0. Like, it's not the end of the world. I'll just 5-0 from here on. Was basically my plan, and kind of I just try and stay positive. Really, I feel my deck is reasonable. I feel confident in my play, so that was my plan.
Okay, so we head into round 2. What are we going up against?
So round 2, pairing, and judges announce the pairings, and then immediately announce the feature match. Feature match for round 2 is Hayden Dow versus Ash Singh. So
tough beats.
Yeah,
that X1, huh? Or
I know, right?
Yeah, 0-1.
Not only am I feeling a little bit of pressure needing to 5-0 now they're going to put me on camera and make me start the journey on camera. So head over to the feature match, playing against Ash, who is I believe is from Auckland, local player. I think he hit some top 8s in Road to Nationals, and is is known as a pretty good player. So definitely thinking, all right, what's he on? Flips over, he's on Prism. I'm wondering, all right, is his deck better than mine? Like, how many generic 6 attacks has he got? I'm already thinking about how I'm going to try and win this game with the cards that I opened in my pool, and how I thought I needed to play the mirror out. Bring the Glisten in. I think I end up playing 31 cards. And yeah, so the match is on camera. You can go see it on Fab TCG, the YouTube page there. I think this is actually a really good match. It was really close. So Ash really had me on the back foot to start with. Ash had, I think, 3, maybe 4, maybe even 5 6 attack generics in his deck. So I felt I couldn't really get through with Heralds. I ended up sort of trying to just stay in the game. I used my Dreamweavers really early just to hold tempo, just to not let him run me over, which I think is a really hard call to make. But yeah, correct decision. Until I managed to get a Prismatic Shield out. Ash held a 6 attack in hand because he had a read that I had a War Tune Herald in my arsenal, but I just didn't play it out. Just made him keep the 6 attack until it was so detrimental to him that I was able to just swing the tempo and put pressure on. And on turn 1, I pitched a Glisten, and it came back. I knew it was coming back around, and yeah, just glistened him out at the end.
Yeah, it was my favorite match of the sealed portion.
Thanks.
And yeah, I thought it was really. I mean, it was really interesting because from the viewer perspective, we did see that Ash had a 6 attack in his hand every single turn of the game. So you obviously were, I don't know if it's punished, but you felt the effects of that, and you had one Phantasm break. Then we saw the Dreamweavers popped for tempo, and I agreed with that, because if that one had gotten broken, you just lost the game on the spot.
100%.
And then we had to see you navigate a very hard game state in the end, where he was very obviously holding the 6 attack, which was actually, I think, the Invigorating Light.
Yep.
So he was basically holding one card in hand after every single turn. So it was pretty face up. It could have also been like the greatest bluff of all time. But it was the 6 attack, and you played around that, and I thought it was really impressive. And obviously, as well, like we saw on turn 0 or turn 1, the Glisten was pitched, and it came back around when you still had that Spectral Shield. So it was an awesome way to close out a game, and I really enjoyed that one. So we get a W. We get one under our belt. It's a hard one too. We play a hard opponent on the feature match.
Definitely. So, I mean, just to want to say, Ash played the game. I mean, I know the holding the 6 attack might be seen, as you know, he sort of shot himself in the foot a bit there. But I actually think there was no... I think it was okay to do that. I think actually what hurt Ash, and we talked about it after the game, is he actually arsenaled a yellow rally the rear guard, which he was never able to get out because of how the game played out and how he wanted to play the game with a 6 attack. But other than that, I thought that, Ash put on the right amount of pressure. He tried to get back into the game. He had to make a really heads-up play with his own Prismatic Shield on my Surging Militia turn. So Ash played that game very well. Yeah, it was a good game.
Mm-hmm. So round 2, it's a hard match. It's in the feature match. The pressure's on, but you get a win. So you're 1-1. We're going into round 3. Obviously, maybe a bit of a confidence boot. What do we go up against in this third round?
Yeah, definitely feeling a lot better. Felt like I played really well in that game. Felt like, I could just ride this momentum out, just keep playing tight. Round 3 was a pretty quick match, actually. I played against a Bolton player. His deck was reasonable. I think, a bit of a newer player to the game. He hit a V turn, but wasn't really able to push the momentum with it. And I was able to present a lot of good attacks that he wasn't able to deal with. So that match was pretty quick, to be honest, up to 2-1 at that point.
Yep, and let's just speed through then to round 4. Mm-hmm. This is, this is the round, I guess the critical moment, right?
Yeah.
So you're 2-1 going into it. Take us through it.
Yeah, so, feeling pretty good at 2-1, play into a Prism Mirror in round 4. Again, a player who I didn't know, but we had a bit of a chat. He's recently started playing the game, but is a TCG player for a long time. Basically, the first couple of turns feel pretty even. He's pitching a lot of blues to the bottom of his deck, which I feel good about. I feel like if I can get through to the end game in this Prism Mirror, then I'm going to be in a good position. I have one Red Stony Wootenhog on my deck, so it hasn't come up yet, and I'm thinking about that card as a way to swing tempo on a turn that he goes for a play with a Herald. So I'm sort of waiting for that, thinking about that. He doesn't have Dreamweavers, so I know that's I have that ability to break and swing a turn potentially if he does get a little bit ahead in this game. And then we kind of get into the mid game, and I'm thinking, okay, he's only got sort of 7 to 10 cards left, and then he's going back through cycling his deck, and it's a lot of blues. And then I get hit. I get hit with I think Phantasmify plus Enigma Chimera, and then Second Alignment plus Red Herald Protection, and then another Pump plus Herald as well. And I don't see my Stony Wootenhog, can't break it, and just lose too much life in the process. I think my opponent sneaks through. I think I have to block out most of those turns, and in the end, I just fatigue. He just puts too much damage on me, and even though we get back through to his stack of blues, I had to spend a lot of my good cards defending, and wasn't able to get back on the front foot. So yeah, really sort of good heads up play for my opponent, just to be like, I'm just going to go for it and put damage on, and I wasn't able to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it ended up having to, obviously the damage was so high that you had to block.
Mm-hmm.
To an extent that you ended up kind of reaching a state of fatigue, or fatigue, as some people would say. And yeah, that's the balance, right? That's the balance with blocking too much, is you can't preserve that life total. But maybe when you did circle back around to your pitch, you didn't have enough cards to win the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I felt good about the bottom of my deck in terms of how I was going to play into my opponents. But just that mid game, my opponent really took it in the mid game with the way that they were to put these big attacks together, these big Phantasm attacks that I couldn't break. And, they all have on-hit effects. The Herald Protection was especially scary because if I didn't block that out, my opponent was then going to be a hit on life and with a Prismatic Shield, and me possibly be able to pressure it, but not to the extent that I would want to. Where he also still had a piece of equipment, so he could block it out. So yeah, tough match for sure. But, it is what it is, right? And then at that point at 2-2, it's kind of out of the event. You need to X1 to day 2. So for me, just felt time to move on. There was a second chance sealed. I wanted to go and play that, and just get my head out of it a little bit.
Yeah, so 2-2 drop. Obviously not the result you were looking for, but how does this affect you psychologically as a player at this point? You still have the PTI to look forward to, the class constructed event. You feel confident on the deck you've brought. Are you feeling discouraged at this point? Like, what's going through your head?
Oh, definitely a little bit. I mean, I guess I wanted to come into this event and minimum day 2, wanted to top 8, of course. I knew it was going to be a hard slog for day 2. I mean, it's an X1 cut, so it's not the traditional 8-9 rounds. X2 makes it. It's you need to 5-1 minimum to make day 2. So definitely tough. When I opened my pool, I felt that I was a bit on the back foot to start with. Didn't have quite the pool I would have wanted, but overall, I felt my friends are still doing well. I had multiple friends who were playing for day 2. I had the PTI the next day, so not too sad about it. Still was also getting to meet a lot of awesome players as well. So just kind of moved on with the day. Went and played a second chance sealed, which I 2-1'd with a really weird chain deck, and then went out for dinner and had a few friends make day 2, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I don't want to dwell. I don't want to dwell on like an unhappy moment, but I think this is an important subject. We could honestly probably do a whole entire pod about. I know it's something that I probably struggled with, probably more than normal people, but that's dealing with loss. So as a high level player, as sort of a a respected playwright, you have a podcast, you've won a calling. How do you deal with losses like this where you kind of don't live up to obviously what you wanted, but maybe what you feel like you should have achieved and what you're expected to achieve? Like, what do you do you kind of reframe it in terms of like, there's a longer goal here, or how do you kind of deal with some of the negative emotions that come with that?
Oh, dude, I mean, now you're making me feel a bit, like disappointed parent Brendan in the corner.
No, I have to talk about it because like this is like when I say this is what I struggled with the most, like it is. So I came off of like a very successful early stage, which was not very competitive, right? Like there was not a lot of people in the calling here, but I had a nice result, and then I felt like I had a good result in the constructed calling in New Zealand with my teammate knocking me out of beating me on breakers, knocking me out, and he was the one who beat me, and then winning the event. I ended up being very happy about that. But then I had to deal with future events, local events, skirmishes, lower level events where I feel like I am equipped to win, and I've put in more effort than the people I'm playing against, but I would still lose, and I have to deal with some of the negative emotions that would come with that. And that was the hardest thing for me to get over. So I just want to, I know you played a lot of Magic tournaments and all this kind of stuff, but what is your strategy to deal with that?
Yeah, I think I do agree on that. Like it's the skill gap in this game has closed significantly. So, when I was first playing and probably through the first year, probably win rate was ridiculous and impossible to ever think that I could keep that win rate going. So I think coming into this event, it's a sealed event. Monarch, I think, has maybe a bit more variance to it as well than other formats in terms of the pool that you open. I felt in Welcome to Wraith that didn't matter too much what I opened in the pool. I felt I could build a good solid deck and outplay people, but a little bit less so on Monarch, I think. So yeah, I guess in terms of dealing with it, I think it's just like staying positive. I knew about the PTI the next day. My goal now at 2-2 drop is win the PTI the next day. Like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in and win this PTI the next day. That's my plan now. And not really, as you say, not really dwell on it. It's it's always tough not traveling for an event, getting prepared for an event, testing for an event, and then ultimately doing really poorly. But there's always the next event, right? Like there's always going to be more events, so it's just either you dwell on it or you sort of pick up and go again, right? It's the same, go to a locals and like X3 a locals or something, and it's like, I don't want to be losing, but did I learn something, right? Like I definitely felt that I just learned how much I think the skill gap is closed, especially in round 1 playing someone like Dave who basically just destroyed me in that game. So
yeah, and I think it's something we all know, but something we have to remind ourselves of, that there's nothing good that can come from kind of dwelling on the negative. Like it happened, it sucks, but you still have goals to achieve, right? You still have, immediately the next day, in less than 24 hours, you have a PTI that you want to win. So let's go ahead and let's I want to stop trying to psychoanalyze you a bit, but let's get into like the macro before we talk about the PTI. Let's talk a bit about the macro event of the
Yes.
the field calling. So the meta, right? The meta breakdown, heavy prism,
Yeah.
obviously what we expected. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I actually have it here. So day one sealed 200. I think it ended up being 244 or 48 players because a couple of players couldn't make it in the end or whatever it was at the 250 cap. 43% Prism. So really heavy Prism meta. 26% Bolton, and then Chain and Livia both underrepresented from, I guess, what you'd call an average of 1 and 4. So Chain 18%, Livia 13% of the field. I think, we talked about it, Brennan. You already made the call. You thought day one was going to be over 40% Prism players in the event, and that's how it ended up being. I guess, do I think that's probably correct? I think, seeing some people's pools, I think it was correct. And then some people had weaker pools and they decided to play Prism, which I don't begrudge them for. It's probably a bit of an easier hero in terms to play out your strategies than if you have maybe a slightly better chain pool, for instance, but you're not super confident in how you're going to win those games and you're worried about fatigue, things like that. So I'm not surprised that we saw that amount of Prism and then Bolton. I think that makes sense. The light heroes are more favored, I think, in terms of what people like to build and play.
Much less punishing as well. So
100%.
my ideas on this are that the shadow heroes are they're incredibly punishing to play unless you have like very specific game plans and you know how you're going to win every match. In terms of Prism's overall power level, if we look at every hero, some of its most powerful kind of pools, I think they line up pretty close together. That being said, if we look at like weak pools, Prism generally I think tends to be the most kind of average deck. I know I always equate it to Bravo and Welcome to Wraith, but you can just kind of put your generics together, have a decent curve, and play your Prism, which is your overcosted attacks, and it can work out, right? Where if you're playing a Levia deck with no 6 attacks, it doesn't really work out. You're playing a Shane deck without any Blood Debt or Arcane damage, it doesn't really work out. And then Bolton, if you don't have any charge cards, like why are you playing the hero?
Yeah, exactly.
So I understand it, and I do think that it is correct, but not because Prism is overpowered inherently, but because it's the easiest to do something with when you don't have a lot. So yeah, I was definitely not surprised. We made the call obviously pretty early into the meta, but I think some of the early opinions that people were very vocal about with Prism being broken in the sealed format and things like that, I think that those are incorrect, and they've been confirmed at this point through what we've seen. Is she objectively stronger than the other heroes? That might be somewhat up for debate, but I don't think so. I just think that if you have a weak pool, it's a pretty safe pick.
Yeah. There's always ways. You have, as you say, these undercosted heralds, which at the end of the day, you don't have a good pool, but you just have damage. So you just play a herald down, and if they don't have a 6 attack, they're gonna have to block with 2 or 3 cards, and you're just trading a card for 2 or 3 cards. So you have damage, and you have ways to win a game just by doing that, just by trading up on cards. So yeah, definitely.
And I wanna go ahead and move into the draft portion of the event. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and skip over kind of the top 32 a little bit and just go straight to top 8. Because it's easier to hone in on one.
Yeah.
So in the top 8 draft, we had a very interesting outcome, which I know we talked about this a little bit earlier in the episode when we were talking about my skirmish and people being in heroes, which they shouldn't have been. That looks like it may have also been the case in the top 8 draft, but it could be, you were trying to allude to it when I was telling you about my experiences, that it's very hard to read signals. But we end up in top 8 is we end up Matt Rogers on Shane, Kiki on Levia. By the way, they played in the finals. And then the rest of the pod was on Light. No other shadow.
Yeah.
So why do you think that happened, and how does something like that happen? I mean, if you had the premonition, and we're going to know that 4 other people would contest me for Prism, you wouldn't go for that, right? So obviously it was something that was read, that they committed to, that they made based off the information the packs were giving them.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, I mean, first of all, when you think about an 8-person draft, the best way for a draft to go for everyone basically is to be sitting directly opposite the player on the same class as you, right? So if it's and light and shadow intertwined. So if I'm drafting Bolton, I want the Bolton player to be as far away from me on the other side of the table as possible, so that I get as many strong Bolton cards as possible through the first few picks, for instance, or cards that are good in my deck. And then the thing you have with Monarch is you have these packs that could very feasibly have, these players could have opened their first packs and 7 of the 8 players could have had 3 light cards, and 1 shadow card. Very possibly could have happened. So I think if we end up with 4 Prism players, which is, half the table is up on Prism, I think all those players are out in round 1, I think, unless what day was a mirror. But yeah, really, really difficult with the way these packs are. I would say, there could feasibly be 3 players if the packs were skewed that way. I think 4 is a bit extreme, but at the end of the day, I didn't see the draft. I didn't see the draft. Haven't seen it yet, so I have to go back and watch and see what happened. I know. So had a player from my play group here in Sydney, Roy, who actually made the top 8. So congratulations to Roy. Had a really great weekend. He was one of the Prism drafters, and he opened Phantasmaclasm, and can't remember what else he opened. I think I read Phantasmify and took those cards pretty early. So he committed himself pretty early, and he felt that it was reasonably open until pack 2. So I think it all just depends on the way you draft as well, which I think is, in this format, I personally prefer to try and stay as open as possible because of the talent system, because of the fact you can, but also because of how it's really hard to read signals. I think, to be honest, until you get back to your first pack, wheel the pack, so 8 picks in, it's hard to read what's actually open.
Yeah, Matt Rod. So yeah, I mean, I want to quickly interject because when you talk about wheeling and reading, so Matt Rogers, who played Shane, he specifically said this about this draft pod. He didn't know he was in Shane until he wheeled an Aether Ironweave. So that means he opened it. It was in his pack 1, and then it came back around.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew after that, nobody's in Shane. I'm going Shane. To a reasonable doubt, right? And he was correct. He was the only one in Shane. And Kiki, like we said, was the only player in Levia.
Yep.
I'd be really interested to know if there was any players that specifically avoided Shadow Heroes because they were uncomfortable on them. I think that if you look at like a high-level pod of good players, what you would think a top 8 calling would be, players would be comfortable playing every single class, which I think is the most likely scenario. But I would be interested to know if there's anybody in the pod who is like, I just don't know. I don't know how I feel about Shane. So I'm going to avoid that no matter what I see. Because it is weird to have 6 people end up on Light Heroes. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's margins during the event. So this is, there's a pressure to this as well. There's a clock in the background. There's a judge calling the draft. You've got to make your decisions. If you, say in the first 2 drafts of the day, you went 2-1-2-1, you drafted Prism or you drafted a light hero, you felt really confident with it. You get to a pack and there's like a really close call between a light card or a Prism card and a shadow card or a chain card, whatever it is. Very likely you're probably going to default to what you know and what you've had some success with already today, and why not, for a really close call. And those little margins can just start to stack up to the point that, that combined with the packs maybe being skewed towards light, things like that we end up in this position. But yeah, I think it goes back to probably just the macro strategy of drafting this format, which again, I think something that we should touch on a bit in detail in another pod, because it's a really super interesting draft format.
Yeah, I mean, and that topic is just so complicated, because in the drafts I've done myself, and I get in at least once a week, sometimes 2. It is very, very hard to read the packs. It does not remind me of when I used to draft like Magic or something like that. Because there are those packs where there just literally is no shadow cards in the pack, and you're like, when you're thinking about early picks, people want to stay open, so they're going to stay in generic. But I kind of staying open as well as picking light and shadow cards, because you open yourself to 50% of the potential heroes. So if you see 2 packs come by in a row with no shadow, it's like, what is going on here? Both these people to my right in shadow. I mean, but the way the packs are printed, they could have just literally not had shadow cards in them. Which is so weird. It totally throw you for a loop. And when you see that, and by the way, when there are no shadow cards, I mean that there's a ton of light cards usually. So it could look like light is totally open, but the 2 people to your right have both picked light cards, or they're probably staying. Ideally, they're staying open. They're in generics and stuff like this. But yeah, they could just look totally open when it's not. I mean, that's what makes it tough.
Yeah, I mean, I could honestly talk about this for another hour, but in the interest of keeping to our general pod length, we're just over an hour now. I do want to maybe move on, Brendan, but I just wanted to say again, congratulations to the top 8. Congratulations to Roy, who we managed to test with in our group here in Sydney from our local store. on his performance, put up a really good result. And also to my round 1 opponent, Dave, who ended up just losing his win in the last round, but a top 16 finish and played really well throughout the weekend, stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and highly recommend anybody go check out the finals as well with Matt and Kiki, because it was a great game. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna head into the PTI. So obviously we didn't get the result we wanted on the day of the calling. PTI, Classic Constructed. What deck are you bringing? What are you expecting? And just talk to me about the event in general, because I've never seen one of these. At the callings that I attended, there wasn't these. If you lost, there was another event where you could play a PTI or something like that. So just talk to me about it.
Yeah, I mean, so the PTI, so the Professional Tour Invitation event, is, I think, a great side event for these callings to have. I believe they're all going to have them moving forward. It's kind of the structure they're going to keep with on the Sunday. For this one, there was 105 players, I believe, playing. I actually think they maybe wanted to have more, but some people were in the main event and didn't show up, so that was a bit awkward. But people were hedging their bets a little bit, which maybe didn't allow some people to join. So for me, very lucky. I didn't really test this format, but I have a great co-host on the pod here who has been playing a lot of Constructed with his team, and was fortunate enough that he allowed me to play one of the lists that they've been working on, which is Chain. So thank you, Brendan. So we took that list, myself and Dan, who's been on the pod, and who players will probably know. We played a few games. I know he was playing some games with you as well, Brendan, to learn the deck. Is that right?
Yep, Dan plays with us pretty consistently nowadays, which is awesome. Really happy about that. He's got an interesting schedule, so he's able to play with us now. But I know you said thank you to me, but I have to say that has to be collectively given to also Dante Delfico and Davis Kingsley, are also tower number 9.
Yeah.
They have also extensively helped with that deck. And yeah, like we did test a bit with Dan, and we did decide to kind of hold the deck back in order to let you guys play it at the calling. I didn't think it was meta breaking, but through our testing, it did seem good enough that it could win the event.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, this Chain deck that you and the team have worked on. So I was expecting a lot of Chain, and there was, I think, almost a quarter of the players were playing Chain. I think 24 of the 105 players were playing Chain. It was the most played deck by a mile. Might just actually quickly just give the rest of the meta. So Prism was the next most played at 21%. And then it really drops off. So then Dorinthia, Bravo with 10% each of the field. And what else do we have? We had Rhinar, Katsu, and Bolton within the next sort of 3 most played decks. And we had a couple of copies each of Dash. I think one Azalea, one Kano, a couple of Viserai. So really dominated by Prism, Chain, and then the Warriors were the next sort of thing there as well. So definitely what I was expecting to see was Prism and Chain. The 2 new kids on the block, people excited to play those. They've probably found a few strategies they want to play. So we had some changes we made late to the Chain piece. And I think what we'll do, Brendan, I reckon we're going to put up a video on the Arsenal Pass YouTube channel of a deck tech of this in the next week. We should do it, right? Let's just commit to it now so everyone can see this deck and we can talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, we'll probably play this deck versus the deck it lost to in the finals on the CFB video as well. But this deck is, talking about it now, I just want to bring us a little bit back down to earth, but the deck is not super tuned at all. This is probably a week or 2 of testing. So probably still has a lot of room to evolve. I think in this early meta, this hyper aggressive, very punishing deck, punishing to your opponent deck was a good call. And we can talk about some of the results that it had as well.
Yeah, so I think the main thing with the deck list so 3 of us ended up playing it, myself, Dan, and a friend of ours, Mo, we built it up for him as well, was that it was really consistent. So I played Chain Mirrors the first 3 rounds, was able to win all 3 of those, and that's just because the deck list that we had was a lot more consistent. We also played Chains of Eminence, which is a fantastic card in the mirror. You play it on your turn, and you either hit cards that they're sitting in banish, or you just name Seeds or a card that's going to be super impactful in that turn. Once I named Art of War, and they had 2 copies in their hand. So there's that card's very important in the mirror as well. So, and then we played Nebula Blade. A lot of people were playing Galaxy Black. Nebula Blade is just super hard to deal with because of that number 4, and people not playing as many Sync Belows and Fate for Scenes as they have in the past. So I might just give a quick breakdown for the purpose of time. So I played 3 Chains to start with, was able to win those mirrors. Although one of them was very close. I played against a the local player from Sydney, Tom, who I've been doing some testing with. He dealt me 27 damage on his turn 2, which was a bit crazy, combining some Art of Wars and the little minimalism out of his chain deck. I played against 2 Boltons in round 4 and round 5, two friends actually who had the same, I think, exact 80 cards. I lost 1-1-1. And then round 6 was a bit of a tough match. So I played against Dorinthia, and I had a bit of a slip up. I made a misplay towards the end of the game where basically I just missed my trigger, which ended up costing me the game. I think at that point I had the game basically won, and just lost concentration. Didn't get my trigger, and it basically cost me 10 damage, which was going to line up to finish off the game, or take my opponent's hand and then be able to finish the game from there. So yeah, a bit gutting that I made that play. Ended up 5-2 in the event and just missing top 8. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. But our previous guest here on Arsenal Pass went undefeated into the finals, I believe, Mr. Dan McKay.
So 7-0 in the Swiss with the deck. I think he played 3 or 4 mirrors as well. Similar results. The deck just feels very powerful in the mirror. I don't think he played. Actually, ended up for me, I felt like Warrior was probably the tougher matchup. I think he said he played 1 Bolton, and that was it. So he ran it through to the finals where he lost to a player on a Katsu control deck, interestingly. So that was quite interesting. And then our friend Mo as well, he was able to take up 4th. So lost to Dan in the semi-finals, but had a good run as well into the top 8. His only losses on the day were to Dan. So he went 6-1 in Swiss, losing to Dan, and then lost to Dan in the semi-finals. So the deck put up, really good finishes, which we were super impressed with.
Yeah, I was really happy to hear that it did as well as it did in the end. But yeah, congratulations as well, like to Dan and Mo and yourself for as well as you did. Like that deck is the macro strategy is pretty easy, but the micro kind of sequencing and things like that is somewhat intricate. So I'm sure you guys all played very well.
Yeah, except for me at the end. But look, exactly. So, 2nd, 4th, 11th, great result for the deck out of 105 players. So, yeah. And then just to quickly, because I know it hasn't been put up yet on Fab TCG, the deck lists aren't up yet, or the matches were recorded. So, some of the top 8 matches were recorded and will go up. But just wanted to give everyone who was curious a top 8 breakdown. So, we already gave the meta breakdown, but the top 8 was actually 5 chain decks. In the top 8. So Dan and Mo, of course, in there. Then there was Tom Penny. I'm sure people are familiar with Tom Penny. And then a couple other players on chain. We had 1 Prism player. We had a Dorinthia, and then the Katsu control player who ended up taking it out. So really interesting to see. There was actually a couple of Katsu control decks floating around. So people had obviously felt that was maybe a good matchup against chain and wanted to play that deck on the day, and it ended up working out for 1 player. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, I'm very keen to watch that finals match because Katsu Control is probably one of the decks I thought that would least likely to be successful versus that chain iteration.
Yeah, me too.
Flick being very good, but just non-proactive strategies seem to be very weak into that chain deck. So I'm interested to watch it back and see how it went. But with that, I know we've been kind of going a little bit over our time, so let's just kind of wrap it up. Conclusions. So, Hayden, what were your big learnings from the main event? I know we psychoanalyzed you for maybe a little longer than we should have, or that you're comfortable with, but what was the big thing you learned? What are your takeaways?
Yeah, so I think from the main event was really around the testing piece. So make my testing a bit more impactful rather than volume of testing. Getting games in is great, but for me, it's more around what I'm actually learning out of those games. So there's a few things I want to tweak to make sure I'm getting the best learnings out of my testing. So, playing specific pools into specific pools to learn, key things about the format. The other piece for me, I think, is to, as I say, the skill gap is really closing. So I felt that in round 2, I played super tight. And, I just need to play like that every single round. I need to play as tight as possible. I had a few lapses during the weekend. I think just not testing and playing as tight. So when I test, maybe sometimes I'm thinking about things at the same time, trying to, think about more the macro side of it as opposed to being in the game and playing as tight as possible. And that cost me over the weekend. Cost me, I think, a top 8 in the PTI as well. So less so on the main event, but more so on the PTI. So that's a really big takeaway for me, is that now when I'm testing, I'm going to make sure that I'm testing with the intent of how I would go into a big event like this, and that's playing, really tight, making sure I'm on top of my triggers, basically just not playing sloppy and not allowing myself to make those mistakes, because I'm just in the moment and concentrating.
Hmm. And so, what would you say about your overall experience? How was the weekend going? Traveling to New Zealand, seeing all your friends. I know that
Yeah,
you grew up there, I think.
I did. Yeah.
So
Um,
just talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, all things said, obviously, tougher weekend on the results front, but I had an amazing weekend. It was so awesome to be in that atmosphere at the Calling. The player community in Flesh and Blood is just fantastic. Everyone is so nice, or majority of people are so nice. I was fortunate enough to meet a number of our listeners, which was great. We had some conversations with some players who have either listened to the pod or have watched some of our videos on Channel Fireball. I had a player that I spoke to in, I think, going into round 6 of the main event. So they were about to go into round 6. I'd already dropped at this point. We had a conversation. Ross was his name, who said he was playing for, about to play for day 2, and he was a fan of the pod, and that our limited review had helped him for the event. So just interactions like that were fantastic to have with the player base. There's so many awesome players that play this game. And it's it's a great game. So just the fact I got to play Flesh and Blood all weekend was awesome. I think the format, in terms of having that battle hardened into the main event, and then also having the PTI on a Sunday, is just such a great opportunity to play a lot of Flesh and Blood. Even if maybe results don't go your way in the main event, you don't get to the top 32, don't day 2, whatever it is. There's still things to fight for and to play for, and I really like that about that PTI plus main event format. But then also that sort of more casual aspect of battle hardened on Friday is great. So look, overall awesome weekend. Got to spend time with friends as well, go out for dinners and whatnot, and just be in the moment, be in the weekend, and I can't wait for the next big event, to be honest.
Yeah, and in final closing of that weekend, what was your highlight if you had to pick one?
Oh, definitely meeting the players that I met. So had some, as I said before, had some really great conversations with listeners of the pod, or just players I hadn't met before but had spoken to. So at Battle Hardened on Friday, for instance, I bumped into Carol and Kieran, and Kieran knows this, but if he's listening, I won't say what happened. But we didn't quite recognize each other at first, but it was actually our first time meeting. My first time meeting the Session Blood Boys. Had a great conversation with them. So just meeting people that I've spoken to and had interactions with in the past, but not actually met face to face. So that was probably one of the highlights for me.
Awesome. Yeah, so wrapping up, we just want to say thank you to everyone who commented on the last video and participated in the competition. It was awesome to get all those questions. We tried to reply to every single one of them. I think we ended up replying to like 50 plus, almost 60. So it was awesome to interact with all of you, and I encourage you in the future to leave questions if you have them, leave comments, because we love replying to them and we love getting the feedback.
Yeah.
So Hayden, we did commit to the deck tech next week, so I guess we'll be doing that full deck tech for next week on the class constructed deck that got went 7-0 in that PTI. And like I said, we will have a Channel Fireball video going up soon-ish. We'll see when it will be published, but that will be the class constructed Shane deck versus the Ninja control deck that ultimately beat it in the finals. We'll see if we who will take it on the second time around. Also just want to shout out Gauntlet, the Fab Discord Gauntlet that happens every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Almost consistently 50 to 60 players nowadays. It's a really awesome place to compete or play casually. We put up a lot of really good prizes. It's only a $5 entry. We raffle off a box to a participant. The winner gets a box, and there's the coveted Discord champion role. So you get your name at the top of the big Discord if you win. So
name and lights.
I'd love to see you all there. Yeah, we'd love to see you all there if you can compete.
Yep. And just before we go as well, back to last week's pod, there was some really great responses, and I think good reception to the way that we formatted that pod with the sort of level up approach to it. And I know that's something that people have been asking for more of in the future, is these tips and tricks sort of pods. So it's something that we're going to aim to do a little bit more of. We might be a little bit more specific in the things we cover. So, whether it be something like a draft pod or, like a playing to win pod, whatever it might be, we're gonna do things like that. So, stay tuned for those. And Brendan, next week I think we have a special guest coming on as well. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, very special guest. I'm super excited. In closing, I just want to say thank you, Hayden, for letting us kind of delve into your mind, break down the weekend, and kind of get the boots on the ground breakdown. And thank you all for listening. And that'll be episode 9 of Arsenal Pass. We'll see you next week.
Bye.